Show. I'm Rhonda Shea, your host, and today, both on the radio and the video side, I've got some special interviews. With me is Cheryl Lammers, and I'm going to Shannon Quinn. Shannon is the president of the Campbell PTA, which is in Jefferson County, Colorado, or Arvada, Colorado, and Cheryl is heavily involved in the PTA and in education, and also is a classmate of mine. We all are products of the Jefferson County school system. And we made it.
Back in the day.
Yeah, back in the day. We went to high school together. So I invited Cheryl and Shannon to be on the show because there's some really interesting, controversial stuff taking place in Jefferson County. And a lot of people, a lot of parents and PTA members feel like they're not being very transparent about what's going on. And also not very wise with the taxpayers' money. So I thought it'd be a great time to sit down and just find out what is going on, what people are concerned about, and what we can do about it, if anything, because I don't think they're listening too much. But there's been a lot of school closures in Jefferson County, and I'm sure that's the case around the country, not just here, with enrollment down and things like that. And it may be very necessary to consolidate, but the process in doing that and what happens to children, and especially children that are on free and reduced lunch, children that have learning differences, or children that are in special needs. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and just find out what's going on. I'm going to have you start. Cheryl, I'm going to have you start. And I'd like for you to, some of our people, most of our audience is around the Colorado area, but we do have probably 100,000 people that are around the world. So they may not be aware of what's going on, and even the people that live in Jeffco just may not be aware. So let's start from the beginning. What's happening with the school district?
Well, thanks for having us on, by the way.
Yes, thank you.
We became aware of this issue cropping up again in April. Correct, Shannon? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
When we heard the Jeffco Board of Education request the district put together a report to tell them about facility use, to tell them about enrollment numbers, because they were at that point, I mean, in the meeting we listened to, they were looking at, I think they said at that point, over 40 million deficit, and we're going to have to close some schools, et cetera, et cetera. So we waited for the report to come out. The report came out in June.
June or July.
Yeah, the end of June. I want to say June 30th. The report came out, and with that, they put a program. They'd been talking about a program called Thrive.
Jeffco Thrive.
So the Jeffco Thrive program,
Thriving
which
schools.
is looking at a thriving school model that has to do with having 2 or more classes at each grade level. Has to look at giving the teachers the support they need so that they can be in teams, and different factors like that. So they also, in this report that came out then June 30th, the report listed out all the Jeffco schools. Now, it doesn't include charter schools. It didn't include the K through 8 schools. It didn't include middle or high schools, because they were looking at a 3-phase program where they would first look at elementary schools, because we have so many, and closures, and then middle schools, and then move on to high schools. So the report came out.
Be careful. I'm just going to get a little careful because it makes a noise.
Oh, all right. So the report came out, and we took a look at the criteria under thriving schools for schools to close. And at that point, I think it was enrollment of 250 or less.
Yes.
Which later changed to 220 or less. And then they were looking at facility usage, like how many programs and things you had going on in your school, and you had to be at a certain percentage for that as well. Campbell met the criteria for closure, and this isn't the first time we faced that. Yes, our enrollment has been down. I mean, Jeffco has probably declining birth rate, but we also have about 8,000 kids that are in local charter schools, and another 5,000 we figure that have choiced out of the district for one reason or another. And then probably they're estimating about 2,000 that are in either private schools or homeschooled.
Okay, so I'm going to interrupt you here because what that number tells me, and maybe I'm incorrect here, but what that tells me is that by allowing open enrollment and charter schools and any type of voucher program, we are destroying the local neighborhood schools. And it may not have hit your school yet, but it probably will.
Yes.
Most likely at some point everybody's going to experience this, particularly with people aren't having 3 to 5 kids. I mean, Rhonda said we went to school together, and back in that day. I mean, all of our friends' families had
Three,
three
four, five
kids, four
yeah.
kids, five
Except
kids.
for me, it's just me.
Yeah. So then we had neighborhood schools, and in Jeffco, we're from the Arvada area. Campbell is in the Arvada area, so it's the Arvada and Arvada West articulation areas from the school district. But in those days, every time they built a new housing development, they built a new elementary school. We didn't have 2 and 3 cars. We weren't real mobile. You walked or rode your bike.
Well, it was
So,
safer too.
Yeah. So there were a lot of schools in our area that were built back in the late 1950s and the early 1960s. And then some more that came along in the 70s.
So can we agree on the fact that there probably are too many schools?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so that's not the issue, there's some other issues, and I'm gonna, stop you for a moment, and first I'm gonna say that Fitzmaurice, the elementary school I went to, closed because they only had 83 kids enrolled, and you can't run the whole school for 83 kids, but I was very sad because I wrote the school song and I thought I'd live in infamy, and now I'm just in the dust. But anyway, Shannon, I think let's hear a little bit from you. That's some good background. I don't mean to cut you off.
No,
I'm gonna
no,
get
it's
back
fine.
to it. But what are your thoughts about as a parent? I assume if you're president of PTA, you have
Yes.
children at
Of
Campbell.
course, yeah, I have a second grader and I had one just finish 5th grade,
Okay.
so.
So, as a parent, what are your major concerns, and what do you feel that they're not being transparent about? Because I think the issue is not that they're closing schools, because everyone knows you can't keep a school open for 83 kids. But it's, why are there 83 kids? Are we using our tax dollars, in my opinion, for the public good, which is what public education is? It's for the public good. And are we taking those and now letting everybody dip into that so that the schools aren't functioning correctly, and now there's going to be no neighborhood schools, which has another whole there's another whole set of issues with that. Not having the kids to walk home with, not having your friends, the people coming home, and the parents being able to know the kids, and no kids in the neighborhood. You know, there's a whole bunch of social issues with that. But what is, as a parent first, what is your primary concern about these closures?
Yeah, I would say my primary concern with the closures is the lack of transparency. I know that they're really harping on that they are being transparent, but I feel like the news came to a shock to many parents. A lot of people just felt like it was dropped in their lap. And then the process around it has been anything but transparent. They've made up their mind before the vote from the school board, and they've just kind of went with their decision without even...
Shannon, I'm going to have you, I know it's normal to look at someone when you talk, but your mouth needs to be facing the microphone.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So just kind of look at us on the screen.
Okay, perfect.
there you
Sorry
go.
about
I don't
that.
want to lose what you're saying because it's important. So you feel that the decision was actually made perhaps privately, and then they'll do some kind of a rubber stamp?
Yeah, that's pretty
Okay.
much what we feel like has been going on, that these decisions have already been made from the district and the school board, and the parents have had no say in any of it. It just has been their way, and we don't really have any input.
So they did not, like, did they poll the parents? Did they
No.
invite the parents to the meetings? Did they
No.
do anything that would have said, hey, come, we're thinking about this, these are the schools on the list, let's hear from the parents? Did they do anything like that at all?
No, not at this point.
Wow.
The only meeting that they are talking about having is the process of closing.
Wow.
And how we as parents can make a smooth transition versus, is this what's best for our kids to close the school?
So here's some questions. Will they provide busing? Because if you live a block from a school and now your school's a mile or two away, and you have a kindergartner through 6th or 5th grader, what's going to happen?
So they did say that that would be an option, but currently with Jeffco, they've been sending out emails saying that they can't find bus drivers to drive the bus routes that they have currently, and that they will be continuing to cut bus routes. So
Okay.
I don't understand how
Wow.
we can
So
add more
you're
to that.
talking young kids walking
Yep.
or having a parent have to drive
Exactly.
them to school, correct, Cheryl?
Mhm.
Okay.
We had, when Allendale closed, they are busing kids from Allendale over to Campbell now.
And that's about, what, 2.5 miles?
So probably what, a mile and a half?
Yeah, about
Yeah.
a mile.
Pretty
Yeah.
close.
Yeah. But
Um,
still, if a little kid, they
right,
can't walk it.
Crossing 64th Avenue,
And,
which is
and
a
Lord
4
Road,
lane.
yeah, those are major
4 lane.
streets. And on top of that, the safety of having a child or even two walking down a street in today's environment, I mean, it's just like pedophile bait.
Yeah. I think what we were most struck by is after the report came out in June, we were waiting for the forums to be set up where we could have some meaningful input as stakeholders in this. You know, we knew that schools had to close. We knew that budgets had to be cut. But our question was, let's have the district explain to us what the current budget looks like, what they're forecasting based on trends that they're seeing, how likely is it that some of the trends could turn around, you know, all of the information that one would want to have to make that kind of decision about school closures, and then let us have a say as to how schools closed. Campbell Elementary, for anybody listening that is familiar, is just in a great location.
Yeah, it's in a beautiful
I mean,
location.
it's at 65th and Oak in Arvada, and it sits well back from a 2-lane road. It's surrounded by open space. Ralston Creek runs on its north side. There's a park to the north of us. There's another park to the east of us. Ball fields, plenty of room to build if they needed to expand a school. It's just beautiful. It's a great place for little kids to grow up, and it's such a great place that the district has planned that they will now designate it as an early childhood education program for the year after we close. So at the end of this school year, they then intend to go right into an early
Wait a
childhood
minute.
education program.
They have not announced yet that school is closing, but they've
Oh, they've announced.
Oh, they've announced.
They announced the 16
But they
schools
haven't-
that would close.
But they haven't voted.
They haven't voted.
Well, that's kind of
But
weird.
it's moving ahead as if it is voting. For instance, every school that's closing has a couple of community, what do they call them? Community.
Input, outreach.
They're having community meetings for each school at their school. We don't know who's going to attend. We know our principal will be there. Maybe the district or the superintendent that's over our school as well as other schools in our articulation area. And that's where they're supposedly going to answer some questions and talk to families about the schools that they're supposed to move to. No discussion of whether or not our school closes. The September board meeting from the District Board of Education is going to supposedly give us the rationale for the closures a little bit after the fact. So we'll get the rationale for the closures. We'll have these September and an October community discussion meeting at our school. Then in October, schools are set to meet with the Board of Education on individual meetings. Again, we don't have large forums.
We keep bumping. I told you not to do it, and I did it.
We don't have any large forums where you can hear what other schools have to say or what's facing other schools in the district. So that it's kind of these isolated meetings. And it's just kind of like another slap in the face. Campbell's meeting was set for October 4th, correct?
And then
No, not October 4th.
September 9th, and then they switched it to the 12th.
Right, we had that problem first with our communication meeting. We put out that it was set for September
9th, and then they switched
and then they
it.
turned around and changed it to the 12th, so we're trying to get that out. But the October, after the communication meeting, there'll be a meeting at Wheat Ridge High School for Campbell. Again,
Okay.
we don't know why they picked Wheat Ridge and not Arvada West.
Well, it's
Or
pretty obvious
Oberon.
to me. They're going to pick during the day when people work, and
Yeah.
they're going to pick as far away as they can so that it's hard
That's
for
how it
people
looks.
to attend. I mean, that's what it looks like. So if you are a school board member, you know what? It doesn't look good. It's a bad perception that you are not being open or honest. You might be. I'm not saying you're not. But that is a very, very bad perception at best, and at worst, it's a trick.
And
So
this
it's
isn't-
somewhere between bad perception and a trick.
This isn't only with Campbell and our articulation area. I've spoke to other PTA presidents with other schools that are on this closure list, and they said the same thing, that the place that they're having their community meeting is far away from their schools, and it's during 4 o'clock in the afternoon while they're working.
And a certain percentage of students are on a free or reduced lunch, is that correct? And that happens in schools where,
Campbell's at
Uh,
about 45%.
so 40, and so you obviously have people, that both parents have to work.
Mm-hmm.
They might be working multiple jobs, and they put it in the middle of the day, a work day, and they move it as far away as possible. That's great.
And we did ask if there was a possibility to do Zoom meetings where people could participate from, an outside location. And the initial comment was no, none of that would be offered. Streaming wouldn't be offered.
Wow. Well, obviously they want as much input as possible. And, I mean, there's no, you do those things, and I've been in marketing and communication my entire career, and you do those things when you, it's like when you plan a press conference at noon because you know they're gonna be on the air and nobody will show up. you know.
That's how this
That's
feels.
how it feels,
Yeah,
for sure.
that's exactly.
I mean, a 4 p.m. meeting for Campbell with 45% free and reduced lunch. How are parents going to get there by 4 p.m.? I work part-time. How am I going to get there? I have to take off work in order to get there.
Well, and I think one of the things that this also emphasizes is there are two things that have happened in Jefferson County. One, people aren't having as many children, and two, there's the graying of Jefferson County. They've been talking about that for years, that the average age is getting older and older, so the amount of kids are shrinking, plus kids are already grown, retirement, folks are living there. So there is a reason to do this, but you need to do it open and honestly. The other thing is that, those of you that are retired, I don't live in Jeffco anymore, or I would do this, should run for the school board. Because for years and years and years, I mean decades now, people whose goal is to change public education to be less public, or less education, or both, have been running for school boards. And then they get on these and they bring in the ideas that we want vouchers because we're going to send our kids to a religious school, or we want, charter schools.
Pay for that school,
yeah. And education is not for you as an individual. It is for the common good. There are roads that I guarantee you, federal highways, that I will never drive on in my life, and I have paid taxes for. There's fire department in Westminster that most likely, hopefully, I will never ever use. There was a police department in Arvada that I never used, but I paid taxes for them. There's so many things that we pay taxes for the common good, because you're going to need this thing, somebody else is going to need that thing. Education is a common good. And when we start tearing it apart, when we start allowing our tax dollars to go to some charter school that really doesn't have any general curriculum like we do, we have control over.
A lot of them do. Yeah.
Some do? Okay, I'm wrong there. And when we start letting our money go to vouchers, to where they're going to teach alternate history, or they don't have any, really when they go to schools that are private, we have no control over what they're doing and what they're teaching. We start tearing down the education of society. We make a dumber society.
I think the bigger issue here with Jeffco, which has been an issue for many, many years, is that we don't have a standardized curriculum throughout the district. So you've got, excuse me, when you look at our CMath scores that just recently came out, you see some schools that are well above average and have a significant number of people that are competent in math and in reading. Then you see other schools that are failing miserably. So you have option schools. We had Devlin, you're familiar with them, that for years has done a really great job of educating our kids. A lot of parents wanted into that school. Why didn't we replicate a Devlin curriculum throughout the district? Why aren't we replicating some of the most successful curriculums throughout the district to bring us all up to a standard that it meets or exceeds expectations? So I think some of this speaks to the accountability of the Jefferson County school system. We've had a lot of change. We've had a lot of different management people in. The Board of Education people are volunteers. None of those people are paid on your Board of Education. Sometimes you get people that have a great background in education, but not much of a background in administrative and finances, which is important. In 2018, Jeffco passed a huge bond issue that was supposed to be giving all of our schools better capital. They were going to build and add to all of our schools and improve the buildings, because a lot of them were old. Well, what came out in like 2019, 2020 is that suddenly some of that bond money was going towards projects that we as taxpayers didn't know it was going to go toward. It was raised by a member of the school board, and they said, wait a minute, what are you doing expending? I mean, the district superintendent only has the ability to spend, I think it's up to $500,000 without going back to the Board of Education for approval. And yet it appeared that over that amount was being spent in some situations. So when this board member raises this issue, they all listen and then they move on, and nothing was ever done.
It's very important to get on these boards, and to, especially if you want to preserve education. I'm not saying schools should not close, that you cannot keep a school open when there's 83 people, but look at the root cause of that and make sure it's because of a declining enrollment and not because we're sending our tax dollars to every other yahoo in town except for the neighborhood school.
Or, as you're saying, that it's not because people are choicing out of Jefferson County because the curriculum is not there and students aren't being given the opportunity to have a really good
Yeah,
quality,
we have
high
some
quality
comments on
education.
my phone because we're putting it on my personal page, but I can't read that far, so.
Well, maybe we can get it
Can
and
you
read
hop
it.
over there and see if
Yeah.
there's anything and then come back? That'd be great, because there may be
course.
something, it may just be somebody telling us to, get bent too. So I've sent Shannon over to take a
Hi
look.
there, and people watching.
Oh, okay.
People hopping on.
Nothing, no big deal, just people
Well,
hopping on, okay.
I think, Rhonda, our biggest, because we've had some parents say to us, we don't want to get involved in this because we just want to move on and have a smooth transition. Well, Shannon and I want that too. We want a smooth transition, but we also want to send a clear message to the district that it is not okay to set up a lot of meetings about transitioning to new schools when the board has not yet voted. November 10th is the board vote. They keep calling this a proposal, recommendations, but they're proceeding as if it's a done deal.
And let me ask you a question. Fitzmore is closed.
Yes.
And I have noticed construction. So they have taken money, tax dollars, from your homes and your taxes, and have started installing
This is left over from the 2018 bond money.
leftover from the 2018 bond money. They're putting in picnic tables and things to make the school better, and it's been closed for a year.
Yeah,
Like,
and
who's in
with
charge of
Allendale
this?
as well, they installed a new marquee for Allendale right before they closed.
They spent tens of thousands, if not more, 50,000, 100,000.
Yeah.
They installed a new marquee, and they closed it, what, within
think-
6 months?
The marquee may have come through the Title I funds, I think.
But
But more
the
importantly,
point is, why are they spending it on schools that are closed? I mean, why are you putting in a new anything? I mean,
we did
Allendale
hear
got new
today, Allendale
furniture.
got new furniture
Allendale-
delivered after it was closed.
Allendale got new furniture after the school was closed. A load of new furniture that they loaded into the school
I don't know if
after
they
the
put
school.
it in or not,
Or
but
they
it
might
was
have showed up.
delivered.
But so what? They bought it, they purchased it, and it went to Allendale before it closed. Now, I don't know what the reason for that is. Maybe they had a mistake on their delivery notice, but there has got to be better accountability.
Well, Campbell we had about 400,000 in bond money, that improvements that were done over the summer. We also had some excess money in our school budget. So what we've got is about $820,000 in upgrades and improvements to Campbell over the summer. We have a new marquee.
I'm sorry, I know
We
that's
have a
not
new
professional.
marquee that went in that is just beautiful. We have a new parking lot. We had new concrete put in. We
New
had 3
playground.
playgrounds
So all this stuff was done on a school that's scheduled to close.
that ended up being scheduled to close, yes.
I just wish
Now,
that,
is it because they're going to put in the early childhood education center? But if they could do that for that, why couldn't they have updated the school?
I
Period.
feel like I wish we could have put a pause on this spending while we figured out if we
Oh,
were
yeah.
going
Who
to
was
close
closed?
the school.
Absolutely, they should have put a spending hold.
Yeah.
And the district is out of money, they're not gonna be able to give their teachers
Well, and
raises
then-
that they were promised on their contract. Is that true? I've heard that somewhere. I don't
If
know.
we're spending money like this, you kind of wonder why we are in a budget deficit.
Yeah.
Like, this is crazy.
It's pretty easy
Well,
to figure that out.
I think essentially the district has promised raises that they can't deliver on.
Wow.
I mean, they don't have the money. I mean, all of the personnel issues comes out of mill money, and they just aren't gonna have it. That's why
Even with
they're,
all of the new homes and all of the new costs, I mean, let's face it, the home I bought for $200,000, now I don't own it anymore, so I don't assume that I made this much money, but the home I bought for $200,000 or $219,000 back in 1993 is worth 1.2 million now. So you can't tell me that the taxes aren't going up, that they don't have more revenue, because it's based on the price of your home, isn't it?
well, I think there's also, Tabor
And the
issues,
building?
they figure in the next couple of years are gonna kick in. When you look at the projected budget over the next 3 years and what their expenses are, with the way we currently are situated with all of the elementary schools and everything, they can't make the budget. They can't. They have to cut.
Well, they have to, and no one here is saying don't cut the schools.
Exactly.
We're saying be transparent, be smart about what you're cutting, don't deliver furniture to schools that have been closed.
We're also saying that as taxpayers, we would like to have had a say into the consolidation process. I mean, I love Fremont. It's been around forever. My brother and sister went there. It was built back in the 50s. Ellen DeGeneres came in and gave them a new roof.
Really?
Yes, she did.
Wow, that's cool.
So, I mean, we love the school, but
A new roof for you, a new roof
yeah,
for you.
yeah, exactly. But 64th Avenue has expanded now to a 4-lane thoroughfare in Arvada. So now The front door of Fremont is within yards of a 4-lane road.
Where Campbell sits back, and it's
Very
just a mile
well.
down the road.
Yeah.
The same road, I mean, it's just a mile down the
Yeah.
road, and it sits back in that beautiful setting, so why not pick a setting that's safer for the children?
Exactly. And Stott is to the west of Fremont and also has they are surrounded by like a senior citizens home. There's a lake there.
Oh, that's beautiful.
There's
too,
open
yeah.
space. So
Why not
we
pick
said,
one of those?
We said take Fremont, divide it in half, or divide their population and put part at Campbell and part at Stott. And because who knows too what Arvada's going to do in the next 7 years? Are they going to expand 64th again?
Well, and here's the other thing. When you're talking about a school that is that close to access to a major road, you are that much closer to, if a child's picked up, the people getting on the road and being, chances of catching them are slim because they're on a fast road. They can get out, they can get to I-70, they can get to 93, they can get to 73, or 92, 73. They can get on highways within minutes from that location. They don't have to wind through a neighborhood, they don't have to do anything. And so it'd be a quick grab and go.
We heard from parents though that were like, what if my kid gets out the front door? They're right
Yeah.
on a 4-lane road.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
if they get
and-
out of Campbell or Stott.
Well, and my kids did that. I don't know about you, but my
Yeah.
kids, one of them, they escaped school. One of them left school and took a bunch of kids with her and just started walking. It was like the 3rd day of kindergarten. And they called me, and of course I got
sounds like
called.
my
I went in,
grandmother.
and I said, "Why did you leave?" She said, "Well, nobody told me I had to stay. They just said I had to come." Oh, okay.
But I think
You know?
if taxpayers talk to their school administrators, what they're going to find is probably what we found. In June, when we looked at this report, we got a hold of our principal, and she knew nothing about it. I talked to the principal at Oberon Middle School. He knew nothing about it.
Wow.
So then when we met with them in July, they couldn't answer our questions because they hadn't had a meeting about any of
That's
this.
just wrong.
And they're still playing catch up. And I think at this point, we're starting to feel like, do people really know more than they're telling us? And we're getting this in little bits and pieces. Like September, they're going to tell us why they made a proposal to close 16 schools. And then in October, you get to meet with the board, and then the board votes in November. So it's almost like the process is going on, and there's absolutely no opportunity for meaningful input by stakeholders. I mean,
that's bad.
I think it would have been nice for our Arvada people to say, well, we'd prefer Fremont to close.
If they did.
And
I mean, if they
yeah,
didn't.
if they did.
If they
And-
didn't, that's okay.
Or at least to have had a say
Mhm.
about which schools stayed open, which ones don't. There's clearly a plan at the district level. I mean, if they're already looking at an early childhood education program for Campbell, well, there goes the idea that our building is so old that it's not useful and it needs to close.
Well, and I think you made a point when we were talking offline that I thought was very good. The old schools, like the schools we all went to, each classroom had their own door and walked outside to the
Exit
playground.
doors from the playground.
Exit
or
doors.
from the
Yeah.
classroom.
And they're kept locked, you
Yes,
know.
during the
But
day.
if you had someone enter a school, that
Active shooter.
active shooter, every single classroom would have the ability to open that door and get out.
Evacuation
And
plan.
get evacuation plans. And we did those fire drills and
Right.
things like that.
More so
And you
than
just
now.
go right out your door. And it was like a matter of seconds. 20 kids, out the door you went, you know. And many of the new schools do not have that. And so,
Or the multi-story schools.
or the multi-story schools certainly don't have that. They can't get in and out quickly. So, I mean, I think there's things that perhaps they didn't consider. Safety, location safety, safety from predators, safety from shooters. You know, how do they look at these things? How do we, and maybe they have, and maybe they haven't shared that. They may have perfect
Good
plans
point.
with
Yeah.
that. I mean, we don't know. Maybe they've looked at that and said, no, a door in every location is dangerous because if they all run out, if they got kids outside, you'll get them.
Yeah, or someone
and
can
pick
get
them off.
in that door.
Yeah. So maybe there's a reason, but the reality. Let's not even go into the reason. But we know.
But your point,
But,
Rhonda,
yeah.
is so well taken that we don't know
You
what
don't know.
options they've looked at. We don't
Well, I
know
will
what they
invite
consider.
them. I'll tell you right now. I will invite anybody on the Jefferson County School Board to come on this show and tell us what's going on.
We'll watch.
And I will not even be antagonistic when I question you, but just tell us what's going on. Why is this happening? Why are you not sharing this information? Or why does it appear you're not sharing this information? Because you are in public policy, when you are in politics and public policy, the appearance of is so important, and being transparent is so important, especially today in a very politically charged climate.
Well,
Absolutely.
not the rhetoric. I mean,
We're looking at you.
the Jeff Thrives school program, I mean, there's some really nice things in there that may actually result in higher educational rates, students performing better. But
Sure.
it just is sounding like so much rhetoric now. One of our parents said in a meeting the other night, she said, I came to Campbell because Campbell didn't just say to me, here's what we plan to do. Here's what is an option that we're looking at. She said, Campbell said, here's the program we have. Oh, here's the program we have. And here's what you can expect from us. And she said, that's why we came here, because it was there. The program was there. Now we're hearing a lot of, well, here's what we plan. Here's what we think. Here's the theory behind what's maybe going to happen in the next 3 years.
Right.
Well, I think the hardest part on that is that same parent was a parent at Allendale. Like, they literally just closed her child's school, you know, a year or so ago, and then they're planning to close the school again.
And she was given Campbell as an option.
She was given Campbell as an option. She chose the school because of
That's bad.
their
No long-term planning there.
no long-term planning. I feel like they're just kind of shuffling these kids around, and there's no accountability for.
So Shannon, let me just back up. I want to reiterate this.
Yeah.
Her child was going to Allendale.
Yep.
She was told Allendale's closing. Here are the schools you can choose from. She chose Campbell, was there 1 year, and now they're saying Campbell's closing.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Oh
boy.
And so this poor kid, he's been, you know, by the time he gets out of elementary school, he'll have gone to 3 elementary schools.
And we all know
there's
that's detrimental on children.
Yeah, there's no
It's very
stability
the first
there.
3 years.
Yep.
I think we're also concerned, another question we were asked by parents is, okay, so these schools close. Where do we move where we're not going to be closed again next year? And with the trends of downward enrollment in Jeffco, I don't think they can guarantee that. I don't know where you go to. I mean, we're looking at that for my
Westwards.
granddaughter. Yeah, I mean, that's
Can't put
about
them all
it, is
there,
go
though.
far west.
Yeah.
It's hard to know. The other, so some parents are saying, well, we'll go to a charter because they're not under district control.
Let me ask Shannon a question about that. Charter schools, do they have to take everybody? Yes or no?
No. Charter schools, they have wait lists. You have to apply to be in a charter school. They can pick and choose who they want.
So my child,
say they
my
don't,
youngest
though.
child had multiple learning differences, disability, ADD, dyslexia, dysgraphia. And so if this would have happened to me, I would be trying to put her maybe in a charter school, but they would have to provide by law the needs that she needed. If she needed a one-on-one person, she'd have to have it. So they would not have to take anyone, is this correct, that has learning differences?
As far as I know, yes. If they said that they couldn't support your student, that
Then they can't
they
take them.
can't take them.
So certainly people with more severe disabilities, children in I don't think they call it special ed anymore, but
The
children with
center
special
program.
needs, they don't have to take any children with special needs. Is that correct, do you think? I mean,
No,
you know?
I think they probably, I mean, who knows?
Okay.
I mean,
Okay,
if
I'd be
10
interested in knowing
people
that. If you're a
apply-
school board member, I would really want to know if the charter schools have to accept people with disabilities or special needs. Also reduce lunch. Because we're going to end up with a couple of schools open, and if that's the case, and the only people in those schools are going to be that population. And it's going to isolate them, which is exactly against what we've been trying to do all these years, to put them into the main population, if that happens.
Yep.
It's going to be like having the building in the back, remember? I mean, that's truly what's going to happen again, because that's going to be the only kids in public school.
Well, if you look at the closure list, majority of the schools are 50% or more free and reduced lunch. That is a significant, portion of that community that is really struggling, and now they're putting them at a more disadvantage.
And I have said this before, I am not in favor of open enrollment. I am not in favor of vouchers at all, and or charter schools. And I am in favor of having hub schools where there might be a STEM school, or might be a theater school, or a music school, things like that. And the reason I'm not in favor of it is it destroys the tax base for an already dwindling population when it comes to children. So, that's why I'm not in favor of it. And again, it's against the common good. Now, having said that, you still probably have to close some schools. And so I'm not saying that would solve the problem, but it might help the ones that stayed open to have more resources to do the things that they need to do, and also to spread out the population of children that are more costly. And I don't want to put them as a price tag, but they are more costly. My daughter needed one-on-one, attention all through school when it came to math. And and a few other things. And so I know that it costs more. There's no question.
Well, special needs programming over the years has been cut, realigned, reorganized. Not every school has the same special programming
Right.
for students with special needs.
And if they send it, and that's okay, that's like a hub school.
Mhm.
You know, I get that.
Exactly.
We're not saying that you have to do everything for everybody, we can't
Right.
do that. But what we are saying is have a long-term plan, don't waste money in the process, involve the parents in the decision. Is
Absolutely.
this correct?
Yeah,
Perfect.
get us involved and kind of tell us where you're at while the process is going, not after you've made your decision.
Yeah. Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
It's like the old parents, why do we have to do this? Because I told you so.
Exactly, Rhonda, and that's what we said today when we met with a member of the school board, and we said, you know, that we feel like little kids, that we're being told, you can't understand the budget, you can't understand all of the factors that we're looking at that go into this decision. And it's not so much the school board as it has been the district.
And people can understand this. Give people credit. I mean, I know you can. Cheryl's like
Yeah.
the smartest girl in our
Oh,
entire
right,
high school.
right, right.
Yes, you were.
It
You
was
and
a
Kathy
small
Knight.
school.
You and Kathy Knight. were the
Kathy was
smartest ones.
amazing, yeah.
You were the smartest people I know.
She was amazing.
And you have a lot of experience with. I'm going to change the subject slightly, but you have a lot of experience with when things go wrong with children, how they end up as adults.
Mhm.
Correct. So tell
Yeah.
everybody what you did in your career.
I worked in probation for about 33 years.
You didn't just work in it, weren't you? One of the.
Yeah, I was a chief for a while.
She was a chief of probate, first woman, right?
Well, in
One of
that
them?
district,
In that
yeah.
district,
in
yeah.
that district.
So she sees what happens to people when children are displaced or bullied or left alone or, you know, in other circumstances.
I
that
also
are,
see money. I mean, when I worked for the state, at one point we had like 1.5 million in offender service money, which is money you can spend to help offenders get services that they need that they couldn't otherwise afford. But you had to be careful in spending that money that you didn't fund a program that would not be sustainable when the money went away. You had to be careful that the money wasn't misused. That's a lot of money.
see. And so to assume that every person in the district, every parent, every grandparent, every interested taxpayer could not understand a budget is ludicrous.
Well, it's
And most people can. I mean, yeah, you know, maybe they can't, but they can look at it and they can. I'll tell you what most people can tell. They can tell when in this column there's this much money and in this column there's negative.
Mhm.
They know what
where
that
did
means.
that money go?
And where did it go? You know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's a little frightening after the 2018 bond issue, is that we were told as taxpayers, here's where the money's gonna go for capital improvements on the schools, here's the schools, it's gonna touch every school. Then we find out in, like, I wanna say 2020, that, oh, a lot of it's going to athletics, redesign of some athletic fields, things that we were never told, and expenditures that exceeded probably the authority of the school. So once again, here we are, Jeffco, that was the big, those were the opponents to that bond issue. They said, you can't trust the way the money's gonna be spent.
Well, and apparently you can't.
So that's
I
what
mean,
it's
at least
kinda
that's what it
looking
appears like. And so I will avoid saying you can't. I'll say apparently you can't. And once again, if somebody's on the Jeffco board or one of the superintendents or principals wants to come on the show and defend this or answer questions about it, I will be gentle, I promise. I'm not gonna grill you, but we'd like to know the answers. You know, as somebody who grew up in that system, my husband grew up in that system, my children grew up in that system, and we've all done pretty well. So, you know, I don't have any problem with the education I received. But I do have a problem with not being transparent with the people who are paying your salary. And Shannon, let's get to you a little bit. Tell me the top, what have you heard as the PTA president of Campbell? What, you don't have to say who told you anything, but
Right.
what's the buzz? Tell me what's happening.
Parents are shocked. Parents are upset, and it's not just at our school, it's across the district. They feel blindsided by this, that they're being taken advantage of, and that not having a voice to be heard is infuriating to them.
And do you think it's more about the voice or the closure?
The voice, for sure. I mean, as you said, like, it's a budget, it's numbers, it's logical. When we're upside down, we've got to do something about it. But the fact that as stakeholders, parents, students, like, we have no say in this is just so wrong.
Yeah, I would think that the two biggest groups of people that should have say-so would be parents with children in the schools,
Mhm.
and of course the taxpayer. Taxpayers have a right to know where their money is being spent.
Yeah, we've started a petition that we posted on our neighborhood page in Arvada, and we've gotten close to 1,000 signatures. people are upset. I mean,
So who's running for school board here? Cheryl?
No.
No. We need to get some people running for the board
I think
that'll hold them accountable. Not maybe not turn them upside down, not change the fact that whether it's Campbell or this one or that one that's going to close, but someone who is in favor of transparency, in favor of holding meetings when parents can attend, and in favor of monitoring the money and making sure it's spent correctly. We need those types of people on our school boards. We do not need people who are worried about books and libraries.
we don't need just educators. I mean, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. I mean, it's wonderful that you have past teachers that are on the school board, but we also need some financial accountability. I mean, it's nice we have at least one board member at this point that has a background in consulting.
That's great.
And working with the schools.
And I don't think, and I'm going to go one step further and make people mad. I don't think we need people that have a religious agenda of any kind on any political board.
no, I would agree with that.
I mean, it's just because it's not good for everybody. It's not the common good. They might think it is, but that's, that goes from religious freedom to religious oppression really quick.
Yep.
And we need to be careful of that, I think.
I mean, I don't know if, like, we've got 2 board members coming up for re-election, or their positions are next year. And we know at least one of them is not planning to run. And the second one says that she's not sure. And then, of course, after that, we'll have the other 3 will come up.
So we need a nice, if there's any people like that, and I believe there are more people like this than not, middle of the road person who will fiscally look at these budgets in a slightly conservative manner. And curriculum. Not someone with a hidden agenda, that they're taking the school board because the next thing they want is a student city council, and the next thing they want is to be governor, and because it becomes a stepping stone if you're not careful. We need people who are dedicated to children, dedicated to looking at the fiscal responsibility and the curriculum responsibility and transparency. And it doesn't matter what side of the fence they're on, they just need to be dedicated to those issues. And so if you are interested in that, you guys, keep checking it out and see if there's going to be openings if you're in Jefferson County. We need to get on these boards. The average person, whether they lean a little left or a little right, the average person needs to get on these boards or the control of it is going wacko.
And I think we need to ask questions. We need to say, how are you going to measure this? That came up today in our meeting.
Yeah, I was going to say hold our board members and our district employees accountable. Like, what are we doing with this money? What are we doing with our students? Like,
what does Thrive mean?
What does Thrive mean? Be a little bit more descriptive than just this blanket statement.
Well, yeah, and acronyms.
Yes.
Exactly.
Because an acronym could mean anything.
How are we going to measure that our students are? You've got this philosophy that if we have this number of kids in a school, it will be a healthier environment and a better educational environment. But how are we going to see the measurement of that? And is it going to be a year? Is it going to be 2 years?
And how are we going to fund the needs of every student? Because that is the calling. That is the calling of public education, funding the need of all students through high school. And that means students who need lunch, or that means students who need some extra tutoring. That means students who have disabilities. That means students who are brilliant and need a little more challenge than they would typically get. We need hubs. We need all of those things, and we don't need, and I agree, we do not need as many elementary schools. Some need to close, and that will offend people no matter what one you pick. So you can't, I mean, there's no way to be right on this when it comes to emotion. But when you look at it through the lens of a budget and the lens of having more dollars because you get paid per student into a facility so the school can have better curriculum, then that's the way it needs to be looked at, but transparently. I mean, that's what I think.
Absolutely, and keep parents involved, keep the stakeholders involved.
Absolutely.
And walk them through every part of the steps, not just jump over things.
And for God's sakes, have a 5 or 10 year plan.
Yes.
I mean, every company I've ever worked for, we've had a long-term marketing plan, a 5 or 10 year plan. And then sometimes the plans have to be, like adjusted, like it's a road going through somewhere, and sometimes the road gets a hole in it, so you got to go a little bit left and then you get back in, or a little bit right and get back in. But the reality is that don't close a school and don't pay for a whole bunch of things at a school and then close it. I mean, what a waste of money.
Is a factor
if they've wasted $1 million on those things, which it's highly likely they could have, when you add this
probably
up,
more.
That think what that would do to help go a long way towards the raises for the teachers that they promise that they probably will not be able to deliver on.
Different pool of
Well,
funds,
okay.
but to fix the schools that were gonna remain open.
So it's different pools, I'm
Yeah.
doing that wrong then,
Yeah,
so.
to fix the
Okay,
schools that are
so
gonna
like you have a
remain
different
open,
budget
build
for
on.
capital than you do for,
Salaries.
salary, okay, but.
I think the planning is what we're hearing too from parents is how, if this came down that quick, April to August, we're suddenly hearing 16 schools closed.
They had to be
Where's the
talking about
planning
that.
here? Why did we not hear about this ahead of time?
They had to be planning.
The superintendent made the statement in the, I think it was the July 26th special meeting, that the time for discussion and to look at options is past. And all we could say is, when was it? We didn't have anybody contact us to come to a forum, to provide input. We didn't get a survey. We got nothing. So how did we miss that? It's not like we're, yeah, it's not like we're parents that weren't paying any attention. So, so I think
Wow.
now there's a distrust.
Absolutely.
What's the plan
Well,
next?
maybe there's
Are
a
you gonna
recall.
close, are you gonna close the school that we moved to?
Is there been talk about a recall on any of these folks?
They haven't voted yet, Rhonda.
Oh, that's right.
We don't even know where, I mean.
And I'm not saying because of the schools that they choose.
Right.
I'm saying because of the lack of transparency.
Well,
Yeah, I feel like with that being
And
said,
budget.
when they announced the list of closures, we received an email that day with, the names and contact information for the new principals.
where we
and
were gonna move.
where we could move to, which was kind of puzzling to me because the vote is still in November.
Of the board.
Of the vote of the board.
Well, as long as
for-
they've had a secret
yeah.
vote, they've decided this behind closed doors in an unofficial meeting, and they're gonna rubber stamp it,
It's
whatever
moving
it is.
ahead now, just like they've already voted, and that was our question, is why not take the September board meeting and just vote? If they have to have 30 days of input, it's not gonna be meaningful input anyway. So vote, then we can say, okay, it's a done deal, we're moving forward, instead of kinda stringing people along that it is kinda done, but not
Not
really
done,
done,
yeah.
and the planning.
And we want your input, but we really don't.
Yeah. We want your input on how best to transition you to new schools, but we're not gonna talk to you about which schools are closing and
Yeah,
why.
And I mean, there could be reasons, and
There
one
could
reason
be.
that comes to my mind is, as soon as they announce it, they're gonna get tons of calls and letters and people complaining, and so maybe they wanna limit that. But you don't limit that by having a pre-decided thing. You limit that by studying it for a year, presenting the plan, and a month or two later, making your decision, and then moving on.
Absolutely, because at that point, families have a chance to voice their opinion and process information that has come out with, data and things from these surveys or from the information that they collect from families and the stakeholders and the parents. And at that point, it makes it less of a shock and fueling this upset or anger or hurt feelings over all of this, that it's something that you're well aware of that's happening.
It's coming down the pike some way or another. So, but this we didn't. It hit us
Wow,
out of left field.
That's amazing. Let me ask you a question on this. What,
Just one thing though, it could be the case. I mean, we don't know that the district did not provide adequate information to the board. So, I mean that's happened before in Jeffco. So we're the key.
the
Jeffco,
communication piece might have fell apart?
Jeffco has a whole cabinet of people that oversee financial things. They also have all the leadership people, which are the mid-level superintendents over the districts. Was the accurate information given to the school board? Tracy Dorland has only been there for about a year, so she walked in within a year. Who knows? Maybe
Yeah.
she saw a really bad problem when she walked in.
I'll tell you something interesting. When my kids were at Vanderhoof, which they got a wonderful education there, and I will always be grateful to those teachers, there's always been issues about funding. And the lottery money was coming through, and the lottery money was going to parks,
Yeah.
remember? And I called the Jefferson County School Board, and I said, I have an idea that I'd like to present. Could I speak to one of the, so I didn't need the top superintendent, just one of the people in charge of the district. What's it about? Well, my thought was, why don't we take this area around the schools, turn them into parks, lease them from the park during the school year for like $1 a month, and then they'd have to be maintained by the Parks and Rec people. And you would save the salaries of those people, you would save, I mean, literally all the schools, imagine what you would save, right?
Like joint use
Right,
property.
yeah, and they said, okay, and they put me through to the guy in charge of the grounds. And I said,
Maintenance.
yeah, and not maintenance, I mean, the guy in charge.
Facilities.
Yeah, the superintendent of the maintenance
Yeah.
of all of the grounds. And I'm like, this is the job I'm trying to eliminate. this is the department I'm trying to eliminate, and that's what they had me tell my idea to, and he goes, well, that won't work, bye.
Oh.
And I was like, well, that's really dumb. I mean, you know, if you've got I said it's a budget saving idea, why not put me through to somebody on the board or somebody with the budget? But they put me through to the actual person. He wouldn't lose his job, that person wouldn't, because they'd still have to supervise it. But it would significantly have cut down his budget and his employees, and that's who they put me to.
It's kind of like, I think 2020, if you look at some of the articles online, with the bond issue money, there was what they call a gentleman who was a whistleblower that came out and said this money is not being spent the way it should have been. You've overspent on a number of projects, and essentially he was just kind of poo-pooed and ignored.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe there's a reason you couldn't do that, but if they looked into that and they were able to do that, imagine what they would have saved.
Oh, yeah. Or multi-use properties where you turn stuff into a seniors center, and then it goes back to a school when the kids are back in the area.
Yeah, it was like, okay, well, nope, we don't want your ideas, goodbye. So, you know,
ideas are always good. So, and that's what's a shame, is that some parent out there or some group of parents may have some great ideas, and we don't get to hear them.
It never hurts to hear an idea. It may not work because one thing I know from having worked for many years in management positions is the higher up the ladder you go, the bigger the picture you see. It's like, you know, when you're climbing a mountain, you can see so far. When you get to the top, you can see the whole thing. Well, so that's the case, and there may be things that you just don't know until you get up to that peak. But the reality is that you need to listen. You need to listen and then decide. And is when people are heard and they feel valued, they get less upset if the decision is not in their favor, because they know they were listened to and it was really listened to and thought over. And then when they say, you know, we're not going to do this, and here's why.
And if you're at the top sometimes of that peak, you sometimes start to lose touch and can't see very well what's going on down at the bottom. So it is important, I think.
And people don't always share with you
exactly
the information. They share with you what they want you to hear, not what you need to hear. And so, you know, it's, to me, you see that a lot in any big bureaucracy or large company. And this, I would say, that our government agency. And it's just too bad. Now, Shannon, what school, have you decided what school yet? Are you?
Nope, it's still up in the air.
And what were your choices?
Fremont and Vanderhoof.
Well, Vanderhoof's great.
Yep. Well, I guess technically we are on the south side of 64th, so that would be the school that they've suggested.
Yeah, well, I can tell you from experience that, and I don't know because it changes. My kids are 34 and 8 years old, so it's different now. But I can tell you from experience that it was a well-run. I don't know if it still is. Who knows? Could be a total idiot running it now. But but it was well run. The teachers were wonderful. They were concerned about the children. The parents were involved. It was a very, very good school, and it's not on 58th. It's, you know, it's offset.
Yep.
So
I've heard great things about it.
And Fremont's not bad either.
I guess my only concern is you look at the numbers with capacity for these schools, and
how can they?
The schools that we're filtering into don't have the capacity to take our full school. Like,
how many kids are at Campbell?
Just under 200.
That's a lot of kids to close the school.
Yep, Fremont can take about 77.
Well, with that, and then if the 5th grade, we were thinking if the 5th grade moves out, we would have that capacity plus.
Wait. So Campbell has over 200 students, and they're talking about closing it?
We have about 195.
195? That's a lot of students.
Yep. And
it's not like Fitzmaurice had 83. There really wasn't a decision. Okay, you 83 kids, bye. I mean, you know, we can't run a whole building for 83 kids.
I think they're trying to avoid waiting until a school's enrollment is so low that they have to immediately close and parents are scrambling. So they're trying to be proactive in some
Are there
way.
enough schools in the choices that you have? Do they have enough spaces to take 193 kids?
Yeah, you just hope that they have enough space in your grade. Like,
well, what happens if they don't?
We don't know. What the district has said is we'll help you. We are going to be there with you.
Here's what I think happens if they don't. You hire a lawyer, you sue the district, and you make them provide a teacher for your kid. Because they have to.
Yeah, they do.
They have to.
Yeah, right now at Campbell, the younger grades are actually the most full. So we hope that Fremont and Vanderhoof have room for all of these students in these grades. And hopefully nobody's getting displaced and
well, I
left
guess
out
early
in the cold.
childhood you could go 3, 4, 5 and go through kindergarten. If they're going to open that, you could keep the kindergartners there. Like if they're going to turn Campbell into early childhood, you could keep kindergartners with them.
Could, that's a thought, but
you know,
and that was the same thought we had. Is if a middle school gets too full, we could always move 6th grade back and forth, you know, between the two. But we don't know. what
Wow.
options have been discussed. We don't know what they've looked at,
Wow.
and
I
we
just
just
think
don't
it's
know.
interesting, if there's not enough space, I didn't think of that. If there's not enough space at those schools, what do they do?
Well, I was gonna say, when I talked to the PTA president at another elementary school, she had the same concern, that her school's being closed and the one that they're supposed to consolidate into actually has a wait list right now. So, you know, exactly.
Well, I guess they have to quit open enrollment. I mean, that'd be the
In
first thing.
some areas, they may have to.
Yeah, they should have to do that. I mean, you know, but then it's gonna force the kids back to the schools that are probably closed. So,
I'm concerned about class size. Are we
Yeah.
gonna have larger class sizes? I mean, the school board rep that we talked to today said, oh, the average teacher ratio was what, 15 to 1?
Yeah, like 12 to 1.
12 to 1, which, I mean, I've never seen a school where there were 12 students to 1, but she said that also included the paraprofessionals. So if you have a teacher and a paraprofessional, those count in that ratio. It's not
Okay.
just the teacher.
well, I would strongly say that it is the onus of the school district to provide every child with an education. And if all of those free and public schools are filled, then I'd get an attorney to represent all of you.
But we just hope their plan.
And I'm pretty sure there's an attorney out there who would be willing to do it.
We just hope their plan is credible, but it's hard to trust that they've made this credible plan moving forward when it's come down the way it has come down, with this
Yeah.
kind of gaslighting, and
They
we're
should
not
be answering
sure.
those questions.
We're not sure we're getting the information
Yeah.
we need to get.
Yeah, they
There's
should-
a board the next school board meeting is September
15?
15th
Mm-hmm.
at 5:30
Yes.
out by the Marriott at the admin building. So
Okay.
we're just encouraging as many families as possible in the
Go
Jeffco area to
and
go.
ask and get your answers.
You can get on the there's information on the district's, on the school district's website about how to speak at a board meeting.
But you have to sign up by this Wednesday.
So you gotta
Yes.
sign up
Mhm.
quick, okay.
Sign
Now,
up
we're gonna
and
have to
speak
close
out.
pretty quickly, so I'm gonna leave the end of this with Shannon. Is there anything that you wanted to say that we haven't covered? Is there any reminders you wanna tell people? What do you wanna, it's yours for the next 2 minutes.
That we need to hold our school board and our district accountable. We can't leave children behind. Our kids aren't dollar signs.
Good point.
That they are still, you know, children that are trying to thrive and be, you know, grow up and be, you know, they're the future for us. Like, if we're doing this to our children, we can't have this. Like, you are representing our children. Like, you need to be there for us. You can't just leave them hanging.
Yeah, that's a good point. The school board is there to represent the children's
Mhm.
needs and the taxpayers. It's a balance, but primarily the children's.
The
It's
children,
to take
yeah.
what you get from the taxpayer and use it to the best as you
We
can
can't
for the
forget
children.
who is going to be
Who's
most
the customer? It's the
well, who's
child.
going to be most affected by this?
Exactly.
These children.
And
Like,
friendships that are gonna break up, and new
Yeah.
friends, and bullying, and everything else that, you know, that we all try to
And
fight.
involving parents would have gotten them more of this information and let parents make, at least offer some credible alternatives and options to this.
Absolutely, I think that's the key. And once again, if you are a board member of Jefferson County, if you're a principal, even if you're a teacher, you know, I think the world of teachers. I think that's, you know, that's really who does it for the kids. All these other people just, you know, give them some tools hopefully, but a good teacher with a dirt and a stick is better than a crappy one with a whiteboard.
Yeah,
you know,
play
right?
stuff.
I mean,
yeah,
I mean,
that's
seriously, I mean, a good teacher is worth their weight in gold. And so if you're a teacher, if you are an administrator, if you are a school board member, and you want to come on and explain this, or just want to have a chance to tell your side of the story, you know what, I'm open to it. So just get a hold of me at KUHS, and I will just call KUHS Radio. Henry is here, or leave a message, and I'll be happy to get back to you. I want to thank you too. This has been a very
Thank you.
informative
Yeah,
hour.
Thank you for your time.
Shannon, good luck.
Thank you.
Not only with the school and the school decisions and the PTA, but with your kids. It's fun to have them that age, and good luck
Yeah,
with
it's
it.
been great to see them grow up at Campbell. If we lose our school, it'll be a sad day, but I have the memories, my kids have the memories that they've built there, and they can't take that away from us.
And hopefully, whatever the decision is, it will be better. I mean, there is the chance that this will be good.
Mhm.
You know, it's just they
Let's
should
hope
tell
so.
you.
Yes.
We're hoping.
Yeah,
Yes.
and so, and Cheryl, good to see you as always.
see you.
You know, my friend, It's wonderful. We've known each other a very, very long time since we were, I always tell everybody, I'm going to say the bad joke here. I always tell everybody when it's somebody I've known for a long time that we've known each other since our chest was short and our hair was long.
That's how we were. And our pants were bell bottoms and headdress, yeah.
All right. Well, everybody, thanks for tuning in. I know it was different today, but I think this was an important issue, and we'll be back to the music and other things on the next show. I wish you all a great Labor Day weekend, and with that, I am going to